Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome back to my second tag of the week. This one on Thursday, so not Tag Tuesday. This is my spring break, so I'm taking advantage of time off to film a lot of videos this week, later in this week. They'll have to do with things happening next week, so I wanted to catch up on some tags and get through these. So this is the Skyrim book tag. I was tagged by Mike over at Pints and Paperbacks. Great channel. He is currently, I think they're still doing, he and Deanie and another booktuber are doing a series of videos where they play Dungeons and Dragons, which has brought back some fond memories for me of my junior high school days back in the 1980s, but also convinced me that the world of Dungeons and Dragons has moved on far beyond what I remember from that time period. So the Skyrim book tag is a series of questions. It's created by Deanie. I'll leave a link to her channel down below too. She's really cool. She has sometimes she plays video games while she talks about books and other things on her channel. I like her channel a lot. So anyway, this is the Skyrim book tag. It's based on the video game Skyrim, which is kind of a fantasy video game, which I'm going to probably give away my age here by suggesting it's kind of an open world video game where you can go and make your own adventures, or you can follow the adventures and the quests set out kind of in the video game. I've never played it. My son played it essentially, I think, until he wore out a computer chip or something playing it. He liked it a lot, but I don't know a lot about it. And on top of that, most of the questions, which I have here on my computer, which I'm looking at, that's why I'm looking over here, most of the questions have to do with kind of the world of fantasy and video games, and that video game in particular. And since I haven't really done a lot of fantasy reading since my high school days, not that there's anything wrong with it, it's just not something I've read, I'm going to limit myself to saying this is the Skyrim book tag Lord of the Rings version, because being an old guy, Lord of the Rings was my, real obsession, fantasy obsession in terms of reading when I was in junior high school and in high school. So here we go. There are 10 questions or 10 prompts. Prompt number 1 says, the Dragonborn can absorb souls, breathe fire, soothe wild beasts, and so much more. What character do you think would be capable of anything? Again, I'll remind you, these are all, I'm going to answer all these questions using my knowledge of Lord of the Rings. So for me, the character in Lord of the Rings who's capable of doing anything is, of course, Tom Bombadil, everybody's favorite Tolkien character to hate. Apparently is Tom Bombadil. I have to be honest with you, The Fellowship of the Ring is my favorite of the 3 Lord of the Ring books. I like everything about it. I really like the parts of that book that involve the 4 hobbits, the 3 hobbits and then the 4 hobbits on their quest to take the ring to Rivendell before they ever meet Aragorn. And I like the Tom Bombadil sections. He seems kind of irritating and terrifying and scary, and he certainly seems capable of doing anything. So there you go. Feel free to at me for my love of Tom Bombadil, but there it is. Prompt number 2, Lydia is sworn to carry your burdens. Who is the most annoying side character? The most annoying side character in Lord of the Rings, I'm going to say is Pippin. Does Pippin serve any purpose other than to cause trouble and get into trouble, and then I don't know. He always seems to be causing more trouble than he's worth. Other than hanging out with Mary and maybe a brief period where with the Ents where his ideas seem to be good ideas. I think that's Mary. Anyway, I'm going to go with Pippin. Prompt number 3 is, did someone steal your sweet roll? What is a delectable food from a book you like to eat? From the Lord of the Rings, I'm not going to go with food, I'm going to go with a drink. I'd love to have, a pint of ale at the Prancing Pony in Bree. I'd love to have been sitting there when Frodo disappeared, and somehow when the hobbits are drinking beer, drinking ale, it always sounded really kind of good to me. This should fit in really well with the kind of theme of your channel, Mike. So I would go with that. I would like to have an ale at the Prancing Pony. Prompt number 4 is, took an arrow to the knee. What character do you think would be the most likely to get randomly injured? Well, in the Lord of the Rings, of course, that's Frodo, because he is the character who is most often randomly injured. And I've said this before in a video, but the Frodo in the movies is not nearly as cool and tough to me as the Frodo in the books. So, but still, going along with the books, if one of them's going to get injured, if one of them's going to have something bad happen to them, it's usually Frodo. Prompt 5, Adra and Daedra, what is the most interesting force of good or evil or otherworldly source of power that you found in the book? Well, for me, that kind of interesting, otherworldly, mysterious source of power are the Istari, the wizards, Saruman, Gandalf, Radagast, the two twins who wander off and are never seen from before. I think that collectively they're called the Istari, even though maybe that may be a mistake, and the name given to the two twins who wander off and don't ever help anybody. But they're kind of interesting to me, who they are, what the limits their power are. You know, they clearly have human failings and human strengths, but they're clearly also not human. I would go with that. Problem number 6 is Tamriel is full of double-crossers. Who is your favorite deceitful or suspicious character? Again, from Lord of the Rings. Well, the obvious answer is Gollum. Gollum may, have dual personalities, but he's definitely deceitful and suspicious, and yet he plays an incredibly important role in the book, and helps the fellows get into Mordor so they can destroy the ring. Kind of interesting. I almost chose, and I don't think I chose him down here later. Yeah, I almost chose Lotho Sackville Baggins, the son of Lobelia Sackville Baggins, who moves into Bag End after Frodo leaves and everybody assumes he's dead. She moves in and she takes over, and then Lotho falls in with Saruman, who at the end of the books is called Sharky, and Grima Wormtongue all fall in together to kind of rule the Shire and turn the Shire into a terrible place, which, movie-wise, one of the things most disappointing to me left out of the Lord of the Rings movies is the scouring of the Shire. When the four hobbits come back from their adventures, larger, stronger, terrifying, and they essentially set things to right in the Shire. That's one of the things I think is best about the books. Prompt number 7 is The Lusty Argonian Maid is the hottest book ever written. What is your favorite romance in a book? Again, in a Lord of the Rings book, well, this has to be Sam and Frodo, doesn't it? What has a greater bromance ever been, committed to page in a book? I'm not suggesting, nor am I denying, that there's some kind of sexual attraction between the two characters, but they're definitely in love with one another, and at the very least to the extent of their bromantic friendship. Prompt number 8, Stealth Archer is the obvious and most practical character build. What type, I assume that's a build in the game Skyrim, what type of character do you think is the most useful, and give an example? Well, the most useful type of character in Lord of the Rings are the hobbits, of course. Somebody has to do the actual work of growing food and making beer and, doing stuff other than fighting orcs, as wonderful as all the other characters who are fighting orcs and staying evil and doing all those great things. Somebody's got to be growing all that, somebody's going to be growing all that weed that they're always smoking, all that pipe weed they're always smoking in the book. Somebody's got to do that, and as far as I know, that's hobbits. So I'm going to say the hobbits are the most useful. Not to mention the strength, the bravery, the fact that hobbits are in fact a hobbit, actually, well, two probably, destroy the ring and rid Middle Earth of evil. That's pretty damn useful too. Prompt number 9, there's more to the world than just humans, elves, Khajiit, Argonians, and more. What is your favorite fantasy or sci-fi race? Well, from the Lord of the Rings, my favorite fantasy sci-fi race are dwarves. Now, you don't really see a lot of dwarves in the Lord of the Rings books, really only Gimli. They are largely absent from the books, which calls into question my choice here. So maybe I'm dipping a little bit into the Hobbit here, but I like the dwarves as a group, as a sci-fi race, because they seem the most human, which is an odd thing to say because they're, definitely not human. But the human characters of the Lord of the Rings all have a tendency to either be noble or really kind of base. There's not a lot of in-between from the characters you see or the things that you know about the different races. So for me, the humans are the least human of the characters, and the dwarves are the most. They kind of run the gamut. They're greedy, they're xenophobic, they're grumpy. They're also loyal, brave, tough, strong, dependable. They're just, to me, they are my favorite race. They're the race in the Lord of the Rings books I like the most. And then prompt number 10 is glitches. such as dragons freaking out midair, giants sending you sky high. What is a surprisingly funny or surprisingly unexpected thing that you found in a book? Well, this was a little tougher for Lord of the Rings because the one thing the Lord of the Rings books really aren't is funny. But one of the most surprising things I found, and one of the things I think is kind of a key to the strength and bravery of the hobbits that we're supposed to kind of gain appreciation from as you read through the books, is Farmer Maggot's courage and his importance to the story. Farmer Maggot essentially faces down a Nazgul all by himself with just his dogs, and not very effective then. It's Farmer Maggot who rescues them and ferries them across, the three hobbits across the Brandywine river. And therefore, you know, I think Farmer Maggot's courage and Farmer Maggot the character is the most surprising. Wow, is the most surprising character and thing in the Lord of the Rings books. There you go. That's my version. That's my Lord of the Rings versions of the Skyrim tag. Thank you again to Deanie for making the tag, and thank you to Mike for tagging me. I'm not going to tag anybody. I've already seen that Steve Donahue has done this tag, and I've seen a number of other people have done it. So I'm not going to tag anybody to do this, primarily because I don't know how many people that I would tag have played Skyrim, and then I have a feeling I've stolen a lot of their answers since I went strictly Lord of the Rings. So I'm not going to tag anybody, but if you've seen this, if you watch this tag, and you want to do the tag, please feel free to do it. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, there you go. Look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.